Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. A little bit of a hybrid show today. We're going to combine a regular BTL with day 4 with the man Frank Scalish. So it's day 4 on day 3. What's up, Frank?
I'm confused by the days and the numbers, but I love it. So
yeah, well, the reason why we're doing day 4 on day 3 is because day 4 I will be in Springfield, Missouri for the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame.
Which I understand that auction is going well.
Yes, there is an auction that runs in conjunction with the Hall of Fame dinner, and that money all goes up. This is the last week I'll talk about it, guys, because it'll be over the next week. So you just have to deal with it. I've been pumping it pretty hard the last couple days, but that auction runs in conjunction with the Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Rumor is Iaconelli is bringing 60 people to his induction.
Man, that's going to be a party, dude.
I know there were a bunch of guys that got stuck in Chicago from Philly last night, and they were trying to figure out how to rent a car because Brian the Carpenter was going to try to go fishing. It's going to be chaos. I was talking to Dave Mercer the other night, and I said, what is the over-under on number of people in the Iaconelli party that end up in the aquarium, like in an actual... At some point in the night, I set the over-under at 1.5.
I say 3.
That would be the over. So you're taking the over on the number of
the
people
over,
that go swimming.
I'm taking the over, and here's why. I have a reason why.
Okay.
Because one person is going to go in and not on their own accord. Someone's going to shove them in. As that person gets shoved in, they're grabbing the person shoving and taking them in, and then somebody's just going to jump in.
That'll work. Yeah, that's 3. Yeah, you're right. We got a good show today. We're talking more about transition. You're going to be busting some myths, some misnomers. I guess they are misnomers. Some misnomers about the transition period that is either fixing. Oh, that was the most Oklahoma thing I've ever said. Either fixing to take place or currently taking place across the country. What a great start. By the way, nice camo too.
You like that? I just wanted,
the camo.
I wanted a blend. But yeah, so anyhow, so back to the Hall of Fame, dude.
No, but that's what we're getting into today for today's show. But the auction is going on, and you do have an item in the auction where the proceeds go to the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame for grants, scholarships, betterment of the Hall of Fame. Let me blow that up. That is the actual picture right there. Frank Scalish, is that a 1 that's circled to show that it's a 101? And then, so what that is, that's going to be framed in a glass deal. Right now, the current bid is $175.
We got to get it. Next time I'll do something better. As far as when I mean better,
that's freaking awesome.
No, I don't mean better as far as illustration goes. I mean, I'm going to offer some other things next time.
Oh, okay. I got you. But there it is. You can go to bassfishinghof.com. Don't do a Google search for it because I guess last year's auction shows up instead. But bassfishinghof.com. Click on the auction link, and then you can go down. I think it's on the 3rd page. There's a Frank Scalish 1-of-1 autograph drawing. There it is. You can bid on it. There's a little description about it. We talked about it before, but that would be a great addition to the man cave. Have you seen the trips on this? This is insane. Look at this.
Yeah.
Ben Milliken, a day with Ben is up to 10K. 10 grand.
That is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic.
You can also,
there's some cool things, dude. I mean, wouldn't you go snakehead fishing?
Yeah, 100%. We had Fat Cat on to talk about snakehead fishing. The one that I am interested in, and I don't want to bring attention to it, but I'm going to, is the bullfrog hunt with Steve Bowman and Tim Friel.
Nice.
They were voted Frog Hunters of the Decade in 1989 by the American Frog Hunters Association. And that I do not believe that's true. I think that's real.
They come accredited. That's fabulous.
But that a day on 10 killer with Christy would be hard to beat, but there's
That
all
would be
sorts
tough
of
to beat.
all sorts of cool stuff that you can look through. You can see all these different trips. We had a whole show about it on Monday.
I actually watched the show. I loved it.
So go ahead, bid on that. Let's try to get Frank up to I think 250 would be a good number, or 300. 250 or 300 would be a good number.
Let's say between 250 and 300.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, and then the Bigfoot hunting with Hackney is up to 1,500. Now, I think switch you back there so you're not freaked out. I think that I know Dave Mercer is on a plane right now flying to the Hall of Fame, which takes place tomorrow evening, but I think that Kevin and Davey are going to be working the room for live auction items. So I'm guessing that the Hackney, once they get their hands on that and start trying to pump that up, that's going to go through the roof.
I like Greg a ton. You know, when I fished, we got along really well. His personality is absolutely fabulous because his humor is so dry.
You fished with him in the boat or just on tour with him?
Just on tour. I never actually got in a boat and made a cast with him. But I remember the first day that I met him. I forget where we were. I forget what lake we were on, but I know there was a big, giant wooden picnic table, and I was newbie to the game. And, you know, I just went and sat down. I just went and sat down with him. It's like stalking. And he was hilarious. I mean, absolutely hilarious.
Were there any guys when you first got on tour that you were actually, for lack of a better term, intimidated by?
No, I was stupid. When I started fishing, I won't say I was stupid. When I started fishing, I wasn't intimidated by a single fisherman out there, not because they don't have skills, okay? Mm-hmm. Just because my only concern was catching fish. And so all I cared about was catching fish. I didn't worry about what someone else was doing, what another competitor, how, you know, all I said was I got to catch one at a time and just keep catching fish. And then that first season on tour, I think I cashed a check in every event but two. And I used to call home and tell my wife, "Can you believe it? I got another check." And then of course the sophomore slump hit, and I was like, "Can you believe it? This sucks."
Yeah. That very first one that you fished, the South Carolina Invitational in '94, was that a boater on boater draw?
Yeah.
I've got that pulled up. That top 10 in your first BASS event is literally a who's who in the Hall of Fame of bass fishing. Do you remember who finished in the top 10 in that event?
I do not.
Manning,
really don't.
South Carolina. So I'm assuming that's Santee. Was it Santee?
It could. Yeah, it would have to.
Yeah, it was Santee. Okay, this was the top 10 in that event in '94. Your first bass event. Just take a couple guesses.
Holy smokes, dude. I can't guess.
Okay. Kevin Worth.
All right.
Jim Nolan. I'm not familiar with Jim Nolan.
Okay. I remember Jim.
Jay Yellis was third. Randy Blockett was fourth. Eddie Paul was fifth. Do you know? I don't remember Eddie Paul. Do you?
I don't either. No.
Rick Pierce of Pierce Family Bass Cat.
Yeah.
President of Bass Cat. He was sixth in that event. Peter T was seventh. Rick Clun was eighth. It has John Bitter here. Did Jim have a brother named John?
I don't know, but they're bitter people.
They are. And then David Fritz rounded out the top 10.
Wow.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could see 6 or 7 Hall of Famers out of that top 10. I know there's some that are already in there.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. 94, 2004, 2014. Dang, that was almost 30 years ago, Frank.
Holy smokes.
Wow. All right. Last time we talked about crappie fishing, we talked about, is it the swimmer that we talked about?
We talked about the live roamer.
Live roamer. That's it. The live
we also talked about the little swimmer, and we talked about the your favorite. Why am I drawing a blank?
I don't know, but I need to pull up Bobby Garland so we can remember the name of it. It's the
Slab Hunter.
The Slab Hunter.
Slab Hunter.
The Slab Hunter. And then the show before that was the DD22 show with the new colors, the True Gizzard and the Envy. That one was a real banger show. If you guys want to know why you need a couple DD22s in your box, at least, regardless of where you are in the country, that's a great show. We're going to get back to bass fishing since we put people through just the excruciating agony of crappie fishing, which you caught a few recently, didn't you?
Yeah, yesterday.
Like a lot of big ones.
Like a lot, like an insane amount. And, you know, Matt, the one thing you said the other day when we were, you know, bloviating about crappie fishing was that with forward facing sonar, you have to be responsible. And so we probably caught well over 50, but didn't take near that home.
Mm-hmm.
I never do. I just take enough home for, you know, a couple of meals and let the rest go. And I don't take the biggest, giantest ones we can catch. I usually keep, you know, 11 to 14, 15 inchers. I don't take the sloppy ones home. You could do damage. The forward-facing sonar is fabulous tool, but you know you still have to be responsible with it as an angler. And I can see how on some of the smaller, your tinier lakes, you know, 1,000 acres or less, how you could decimate a lake. If you put 5 guys on there that know what they're doing, and they can literally decimate the place. So you have to be really, you know, really just
cognizant, mindful,
mindful, and cognizant.
The one thing we did not mention in the crappie episode that I think is important and is when you're throwing those small crappie baits like the live roamer or any of the little minnow style baits, a loop knot on your jig head is critical to success. You need to learn, and I call it the Rapala knot because it's the knot that they suggest you tie with the I don't know if it's still, but remember when you used to get the Rapala, it had the little thing in there, like how to troll your G11. And then it's like, here's how to tie the loop knot, where you tie an overhand granny with the, with a big tag end, and you leave the hole, and then you go through the eye, and then you go back through the overhand granny, wrap it 3 times, go back through, boom, easy loop knot.
Yeah, it's really easy. We tie that steelhead fishing a lot when we're swinging streamers, so the streamers articulate really nicely. So that knot's, I'm very familiar with that knot. But you're right, you have to. And I did an experiment because the waters where we live are much cleaner than what Matt and I have ever fished. So I used a fluorocarbon leader on mine. And so every time I wanted to change a bait style or a jig head style, I would have to retie everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got kind of irritated with that. Well, they make these little things, they're called fast clips. They're tiny little clips, and you just clip the, like if you want to throw a road runner, you clip it on. If you want to throw a jig head, you just clip it on. And I was a little concerned, Matt, because some of those crappies can be big, and I wasn't sure the strength of these little tiny clips wire, right? And so, dude, the first giant one I got, I smoke them and I boat flip them in the boat. All right. Yeah. And it comes off in the boat. And I see the crappie jig laying on the floor and the crappies flopping around. And it was only about 1.5 pounds. And I grabbed the crappie and I chucked it back because I was just out just playing, you know. So I chuck them back, and I noticed that the jig's not attached to my line. And dude, that little clip was straightened out. Like I got him in the boat, he came off in midair and landed in the bottom of the boat. And so I said, okay, that's never going to happen again. So from now on, I am Rapala knotting everything.
I had it there.
I saw it. That's
Pop it up again there. It's literally just the overhand, and then you loop it back through, wrap it 3 times, go back through that loop, go back through the other loop. And there's probably nothing tougher than trying to describe how to tie a knot on a podcast. So
you can't do it. You can't. Don't even try. You can't do it. It's the most visual thing you have to see. Can you imagine doing an FG knot? Explaining how to tie it.
No, I used to hate when I shot videos with the touring pros when they were like, "Hey, we need knot videos." I always dreaded filming them. Well, and now on the other end, I dread trying to tie them to show people.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. I mean, you you use the double uni, right, for braid to fluoro connection.
Yeah.
I use the FG knot, and because it's like this, we both throw the Palomar knot on dang near everything we tie on the business end.
Yep.
Unless you need a loop knot, and then you're doing the Rapala knot. But so you said why would you change the Palomar knot? Because it doesn't fail if you tie it right. It's a great knot. I've never had an issue ever with it. So why switch? Well, it's the same thing with the FG. Okay, I've never had an issue with the FG, and so I have a hard time like the double Palomar is easy. I mean, the double uni is easier to tie, I think, than an FG knot because there's less room for an error. If you don't do the FG knot properly, there's an error.
Hey, look at this. There's your tutorial on how to tie the FG.
Oh my gosh.
It's a 10-step process.
Oh yeah, it is, but it's not that complicated. It's truly, truly not complicated.
You had to learn that recently. That's not a knot you've been tying for a long time. That hasn't been around a long time, Frank.
It's been around for like 3 years.
And you taught yourself how to tie it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it's literally, that knot is literally as thin as the braid.
I don't ever have an issue with the uni to uni.
No, I know, and Frankie ties the uni to uni, and he never has an issue.
I will say that the guys who are the guys, 95% of them tie the FG.
It's just so thin. I mean, the FG knot is super, super thin. I've experimented with other braid to fluoro connections, and some of them get stuck in the front guide.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for me. So not so much if I'm using a short leader, because you never make it to the knot. But if I'm using a 15-foot leader or something and you're smallmouth fishing, you got to get the smallmouth close enough to grab. You know what I mean? So I kind of just never had an issue with the FG, so I stayed with it. And then I tried something that they said they cautioned you against doing, and that was super gluing your FG.
Okay.
And so I super glued one, and that takes the design of the FG knot and gives it a faulty spot, because as you pull, that knot gets tighter around your braid connection. I mean, around your fluorocarbon connection. Mm-hmm. Well, when you super glue it, it loses that grip on it. It doesn't tighten up anymore. And so I did that one time, and one time only. And like I said, I've never experienced an issue with it.
But then in bass fishing, from your main line to your eye of your hook or your snap, you're always a Palomar guy.
Always. The Palomar has not failed me ever. Most guys, they'll break off and they'll blame the knot, but it's not the knot. The line gets caught where the hook eye meets the hook shank. There's that gap there. The line will go around and get caught in there, and it's like a cutting tool. And if you set the hook and the line is in there, it'll cut the line. So,
this is the Palomar right here. So I'm a Palomar guy too, and this is the this is by far the most important thing I could ever say about a Palomar knot, and I'm sure you'll agree, is you want, see right down in this area right here, you want,
110%.
if you do not see the cross hatching where you have the two lines that go over the eye and then the two lines, if those are not clean, if they're crisscrossed like that instead of like this, if they're crisscrossed, that line will cut each other and you will break off on your hook set every single time.
Right. And done right, it usually falls into place.
Yep.
If you're in a hurry and you're doing it sloppy and maybe your pull through loop is too big, or or your lure's flailing around, it could twist on you. And so you just got to be careful. So it's an easy knot to tie. I just take my time with it and I look for the double knots in the hook eye,
right there,
or the snap. I look for the double knots. If they're doubled up, nice and good, cinch it down and cut it and be on my way.
Mm-hmm. Are you a snug tag end guy? Like, are you a stickler for a snug, tight tag end?
Easy.
God, eventually I'll grow up and become mature. Or will you give it an inch or two of play? I say this because when I fished with Mark Jeffries, he has like a 1.5 to 2 inch tag end on everything, and it drives me up a wall.
No, I cut it short, but I want a little bit sticking out of the end, because if you snug it right up to the knot, if the knot tightens, you could pull that through the knot. But it's close. Mine are super close, dude. They're like almost too close for comfort for most guys. But I don't cut it right up against itself, because if it snugs down a little more, it's going to open up.
Yes,
a snug tight end.
We're talking about.
This is not a night show. This is a daytime show.
Yeah, that's David said the Palomar knot tied well is strongest, tied poorly is one of the weakest.
Correct. And like I said, I don't knock on wood somewhere in here. I don't experience breakoffs.
Jeremiah, I think it was Hackney. We had him on a couple years ago. It wasn't probably. That's some great memory there, Jeremiah. He said, I think it was your podcast, but I think Hackney said that's about the only knot he ties as well, a Palomar. And I do remember asking Hackney, as we talk about his Sasquatch hunt and your first dinner. It's a Hackney show, but he said, I asked him, I said, hey, under normal circumstances, when you're flipping 20 to 25 pound test, how often do you break off on the hook set? And he goes, never. He goes, you should never break off on the hook set unless there are extenuating circumstances. So if you're fishing,
Go ahead.
No, he just said you should never break off unless it's like, you're around cables or zebra mussels or something like that. But if you are breaking off on a hook set, it is 100% on you.
Absolutely. It is. I hear guys say, oh, I broke it off. I broke another one. I broke another one. I broke another one. I said, you better analyze what's going down here. Because when I was competing, the key to success, aside from your knowledge, the key to success is to control every variable that's within your ability to control. And so if I experienced issues like, for example, if I'm crankbait fishing and I keep losing fish, they jump and come off all the time, then I analyze everything from rod length, rod power, line, hooks, all the way down. And you can only change one thing at a time to figure out where the problem is. If you change multiple situations at one time, you can't narrow it down, because now you don't know, was it the hook, was it the stiffness of the rod, was it the line, you don't know if you change more than one. So you got to do one at a time. So in my course of becoming a pro, going through the pros, anytime I ran into an issue, I would start breaking it down one component at a time to alleviate the problem. And I have gotten to the point now where I almost, this is going to be the kiss of death. I don't even want to say it. Knock on wood again. I almost never lose a fish, and I can't even remember the last time I broke one off. I just can't. I mean, you have to go through like my crankbait rods. Everybody knows I throw Powell crankbait rods. I like graphite over fiberglass. I don't own a fiberglass cranking rod. I don't think they're sensitive enough. I don't think you feel enough. So I don't even own one. But with my cranking situation, I noticed that certain crankbait rods are better for certain things. Like when I'm target casting, I'll use the Endurance 725. It's a 7'2", and it's a 5 power, so it's like a medium heavy, but it's got a nice super fast tip. The tip does all the work, but it gives me accuracy at close range. When I hook a fish, I have the backbone to get them out of cover, because most of the time I'm square billing with that stick. So it gives me the ability to get them out of the cover and control them. I tried square billing with my 7.5 footers and my 8 footers. You lose close range accuracy. And then when you're tight to the cover, it's cumbersome. You got the long rod in the way, a lot of overhanging branches. Sometimes the 8 footer gets caught in the branches. So you just eliminate as you go. And it's with every single technique that I fish. It's the same thing. I would eliminate everything until I got it down where it was bulletproof. Carolina rigging, the first time I went to braid for the Carolina rig rod, there was a very distinct set the hook, break the leader in the beginning, because when we used mono back in the day, and then fluorocarbon, your fluorocarbon to fluoro or mono to mono. I used a 7.5 foot heavy for my Carolina rigging, because I needed to get all that line stretch out as fast as I could. Well, when I went to the braid, I'm using my Carolina rig setup, and it was way too much, and I kept snapping leader after leader after leader. So I understood what the issue was right away with that system. So I dropped down to a 765, which is a 7.5 foot medium heavy, extra fast tip.
So you're basically putting the stretch of the line back into your hook set, but you're doing it with the rod.
Correct. Theoretically, you're not putting the stretch back, but you're right. I'm compensating a little bit. And the other thing that I did was on my Carolina rig rod, if I reel down and pull on a fish, my drag slips. It goes just a smidge. That's the emergency brake. Okay, that is the emergency brake. So I got the Carolina rig thing down. What's that say? Crazy we could.
Even the hook.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding, because you're talking about, when you, especially on a Carolina rig back in the day, you bomb a cast out there, you're literally you're casting that thing. I don't even know how far, but when you cast it, you're like, you know what I mean? And then it hits the water, and then you get a bite, and you reel down to it, and you pull, and you reel, and you reel, and you reel. You would probably have 4 foot of line stretch back then that you have to pick up and tighten up on that fish to get the fish. It's amazing we ever landed one. You know what I mean? So the technology has come super far, because the rods of today are they're also way better than yesterday's equipment. The line is way better than yesterday's equipment. Everything we use as fishermen today is far superior as far as equipment goes. Now, some of the old lures, I think, have it over some of the new lures. And I'm not going to get into each lure and why I believe that, but I do believe that.
But even on the old lures, you're putting new components on them.
100%. You put new split rings, new hooks. You have to. You absolutely have to. So the sport today is just it's fabulous. I mean, this sport's fabulous. It's never ending and it's always learning. Like here, okay, everybody knows I design colors and lures and blah blah blah. Everybody knows that. So I was down the basement the other day. I have a signature series, numbered, limited edition signature series coming out on LureNet, and I have the Legends Bait Effects series coming out on LureNet. So I'm experimenting with all kinds of different pearls for the bait effects. Yeah, the Sea Rig episode was good. So I'm experimenting with all those pearls for the bait effects, but my signature series colors, I'm doing things a little bit. I don't want to say more like the color number 7, but kind of like the color number 7, where I'm going to jump out of the boundaries just a tiny bit.
I would like to interrupt you to say that the reason that I believe a big reason why you're getting the opportunity to do this is because of the BTL listeners and their feedback for the color number 7. That came out a couple years ago. So a lot of this stuff that Frank you're gonna get the opportunity is because of the loyal BTL listeners. Yeah, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's fabulous. And here, look, you guys have more power than you realize, because if you want to see things, like if you want a color to be brought back or a lure to be brought back, if you want that stuff, if you guys speak up about it, and I can show where there's a demand for it, in most instances, I can bring it back, or I can get it to come back. That's why this venue is so cool, because if you think about it, I'm sitting here at my house behind my computer. Matt's at his studio behind his computer. Okay. And look at all the changes we've done so far. Look at everything that and when I say we, I don't necessarily mean Matt and I mean you guys, the audience. Look at what we've accomplished. The bring back of Canary was absolutely fabulous. I had a bunch of guys DMing me for that color in Norman's. We brought it back, and it was fabulous. A color they can never, ever, ever get again. And so, and here I got another color I'm bringing back, but I can't talk about it right now.
Oh, you can't tease us like that, Frank.
Yeah, I can't. I just can't bring it up yet. But
okay.
But when it comes back, I will be on it, because I will not only will I be on that color, I'm going to explain to you why it's so good, and it's the simplest thing on earth. And when I explain it, you guys are going to lose your mind, because nobody thinks about this stuff. And so I got them to bring it back, and I got them to bring it back in a bait that I wanted it back in so bad. So you will just, okay, calm down.
No, you're good. You sent me, I remember, I want to show this to people. I don't think I've shown it before. Can I show this color, that one that you sent me before?
Show whatever. Yeah, whatever.
I can. All right. The BTL crappie.
Yeah, oh yeah, that should be
This is a color that needs to be in a every plug that you throw around brush anytime in the post spawn.
You gotta get close.
Whenever the I'll go big. Whenever the crappie are up shallow or around the brush, and I'm scared to throw these because they're so beautiful.
Oh yeah, that's my real crappie pattern. Dude, I wonder if that came out on Paint Shop one time.
I don't know. It's freaking phenomenal, though, especially with as much as we've seen in the glide baits play, and how we've figured out how many of these lakes that have small stunted crappie in them, the bat, like, so what I've seen with the forward facing sonar, which I'm sure you've seen now too, are a lot of time around the crappie. Like, let's say you're just crappie fishing, and when they stop biting, I used to always think, it's because, we're catching them and they're getting used to us. It has nothing to do with that. 90% of the time it has to do with the big bad wolf, the predator, the largemouth bass is lurking just outside of that pile. and you'll watch them come through and just eat 8-inch crappie like it's their job, because it really is.
Yeah, it's really crazy because you could, when you're doing it, you see what the crappie look like on your screen, and then you see the shark show up, and
the shark.
And it's wild because the other day we caught some bass in the mix too. Things got a little sluggish, and then all of a sudden that freaking 14-foot rod's bowed over to the core.
No, that's what Mike Mark said. That was well said, Uncle Frank.
But yeah, so cool stuff. And then like okay, War Eagle has a new football jig out. It's the pro football jig. It's a fantastic. This is in the package. I'll get into this real quick. It's in the package. The pro football jig. It has a medium heavy wire, so it's kind of thin, but it's super strong, which is good. I got one in the thing I'll take out, and I already trimmed the skirt on it. But it's the wire on it is thin for easy hook penetration, but this thing is strong as could be. The weed guard is not a super thick, heavy weed guard, but it's heavy enough. Really important in the football jig. The other thing I love about this thing is the way the football head is designed. I'm trying to see if I can get the right angle on it. It goes up to the line tie, and nice symmetrical.
Here,
almost like a point.
I just found it. You can see it right there really well.
Yeah, so it's almost to a point. So here's what happens. It makes it more snag proof. Not only more snag proof in the rocks, but it makes it more snag proof in brush, which is very important, especially if you guys fish table rock a lot. You know what I'm talking about. So we were talking about colors. So I had given them a bunch of skirt colors that I wanted to see in a football jig. And lo and behold, they didn't even tell me about it. They just came out with it. This is called Frank's Blue Craw.
Ooh.
Okay, this is a color I've been tying for a long time. And they made it, and they actually called it Frank's Blue Craw. And this is the 3/4 ounce. I like the 3/4 ounce a lot. I'll start with a half, but usually wind up with the 3/4. Now look at the way I trim the skirt. You see how it looks like 2 layers?
Mm-hmm.
The top part of the skirt bellows out. So I trim the top part of the skirt down, so it's shorter than the back. Now here, I'm going to open up the one that I didn't trim, and I'll show them to you side by side. This is really important. I got another trick that I did, and I'm going to show you that too. This is really important. So this is what the untrimmed skirt looks like. Ooh, this is the untrimmed skirt. And then let me get back to my trim skirt. And then this is the trim skirt. So you see the difference?
It looks like a totally different jig.
It is. And so what happens is I get more movement out of the front part of the skirt here. Now here's the other important reason why I trim this thing. Okay. Oh, trimmed one. Okay. So, well, here's the other tip. The other tip I do is on these, especially on green pumpkins and watermelons, I bar my keeper guards, and all I do is I take a brown Sharpie, and basically I make bars on the bait, because I know
that looks sexy.
Yeah, because here's what I noticed in the water, because I pay attention to color all the time. Here's what I noticed in the water. The straight green pumpkin / watermelon weed guards stand out differently against the jigs. They're really noticeable in the water. They're not as natural as it looks out of the water. And so I bar them. I bar all of them. Anytime except for my black ones, obviously you don't have to. So anytime I do this is what I do to them. I put the bars on, because I want to break that solid, shiny weed guard up.
Right.
I don't want it as visible. Now, back to the trimming of the skirt. So I trim them like this for a reason. If you notice that they're just behind the hook, they're just behind the hook. All right. So if I'm going, I have 4 trailers that I use almost exclusively on my football jigs. Unfortunately, one of them is not made anymore, so you'll have to use a twin tail grub. And this was an old Yum product that's discontinued. This is my favorite football jig trailer on earth. I like the paddle tails on the ends.
Got this. You said the swimming yo mama.
It's the Bad Jam, I believe.
Okay.
Anyway, this is my number one, and the reason I like it is because of the shape of the body. So it's wider than it is thick. It'll help keel the jig and keep the jig riding hook point up. It helps with that. So my other trailer of choice, and I'm going to rig these up and then just trash them just to show you. My other trailer of choice is the Yum Spine Craw, and I use the Spine Craw when I want a short compact bait. I see how far I cut a lot off of it. And so when I rig it down, and I'm going to show you the importance of your skirt trimming here in a minute. Okay, so when I ram that thing up against the skirt like that, it bellows the inside of the skirt out. But if you notice, my pinchers are sticking out below my skirt.
Mm-hmm.
This is the important thing, because now what's going to happen is you're not impairing the action on the fast claw. The spine craw has a super tight fast claw movement. So now you're not impairing the action. If you have strands of skirt material, they get in the way of this, and believe it or not, they stop them from fluttering when you're dragging it. So that's that. Probably my second all-time favorite football jig trailer is a Yum Money Craw, and this is Bama Magic. It's green pumpkin and blue pearl. This teamed up with this skirt combination is hard to beat. So again, this action is a little bit different than the other stuff. These claws move very differently. They get tight together and they're wild. They crisscross on top of each other and they're really wild how they move. So again, my trim skirt. So now I have the business end of the trailer hanging below the skirt. This gives me a big bulky top profile in the water. And then these legs in the water, they actually crisscross back and forth like that, nice and tight. They move real tight together. All right. So on this 3/4 ounce, if I'm fishing shallower rock piles and stuff like that, I go to the 3/4 because then I swim it like a wobblehead. And it does the same thing for me. That's why I never got on the wobblehead hardcore, because this was my version of it, basically.
Okay. Yeah. I said we call that scrubbing a football head before scrub
right.
it across the bottom, cast it up into 2-3 foot of gravel, and just slow crank that thing. And if you start at the 3/4, by the end of the day, it's about a 1/2 ounce.
Yeah, exactly. These are my 2 favorite trailers, bar none, right here. These are my 2 favorites, bar none. Go ahead.
It's interesting. I'm going to piggyback on this. I want to add this, Frank. So this is my favorite footage of crawfish underwater, and you can see, just based on how they behave, you can see the flaring. You can
on
see,
guard.
but like look at how you've got antennas, you've got legs, you've got all sorts of stuff, and then it gets compact. They come together
when they scoot backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what you're imitating right there.
That's what you're looking at. And that's what you basically just showed how to how to make with your football heads.
Right. And so, and then the next trailer I use if I want a more wide claw action is I'll use the Christie Craw.
Okay.
Because these claws in the water go out and vibrate out here like that, real wild like. And so those are my 4 football jig trailers that I literally live by. You know what? I wouldn't even hesitate to do that. I wouldn't hesitate that in 1 second to do that.
Put a big giant worm on the back, or
wouldn't even hesitate.
A stick bait on the back. There's someone, they do that up north a lot, is put a Cinco style bait.
Yeah, my buddy fishes Mexico all the time, and they'll put a full 5.
Oh, show the hook on that. There are a couple guys that wanted to see the hook on that bait, Frank.
Yeah. So I'm going to get the hook exposed perfectly.
Okay. It's not a funky hook or anything. It's just
no, and it's a little shorter shanked, which I love because your trailers work better on the shorter hook. It's a little shorter shanked, which makes it a little more weedless. The weed guard's got the right angle on it. You see how the end of the weed guard comes right behind the barb of the hook.
Yep. You see how that weed guard's tilted down a little. That's in an episode of BTL as well, under football heads.
Correct. So this is really this is all around a really good deal right here.
Is that this time of year? Will you throw that this time of year?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess that's the transition. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could save it. That is a War Eagle. Yes, that is the new War Eagle Pro football head. There you go.
There you go.
And here, this would be a great time to throw this up.
You're fast on the computer, Matt.
Oh, don't say that.
No, why now we're gonna have it. Oh yeah, that's right.
That BTL works on that too, because that's not on sale. BTL 23, 15% off of that jig right there. At lurenet.com.
Right. So this is actually a really great time. This is really a great time of year to be throwing a football jig. In the transitional stages, the bass are going back to what I call their pre-spawn locations. They're going to be on the flats connected to the mainland because that's where all the bait's going. That's where all the bass are going. So they're going to start to use those. I can't either, dude. I can't either. Matt had to call me and remind me.
Gators Adventure said, sorry, Uncle Frank on a Wednesday. I can't keep up with all the different days and times. Okay, back to transition.
So, yeah. So what happens is so just remember this, the bigger the flats, the more the bass. And I'm looking for stuff connected to the mainland this time of year. And when they get on secondary points and those big gravel flats that are, connected to the mainland, come out and drop off sharp at the back end of them into the main river channel, the football jig is money. So are crankbaits also this time of year, because here's the one thing. The one thing that I have to tell you, I don't know how much time we have left. How much time do we have left?
However long it takes.
Okay, so however long it takes. So we'll wrap this up briefly. So you have to remember something, and here's one of the myths. Everybody goes, ooh, it's getting cooler out at night. The bass are going to start moving because the water temperatures are dropping. The bass don't start moving because the water temperatures start to fall, because the first water to cool up is the backs of pockets and creeks and shallow water areas are the first to start feeling the effects of the cool down. The main lake water barely fluctuates a degree or two, maybe a little on the surface, but once you get below the surface, it's all what it was. They start to move predicated on the length of daylight. Just like in late winter, early spring, the bass start to go where they want to go because of the days are starting to get longer. In the fall, all the bait fish starts to bunch together to get ready for their migrations because the daylight's now getting shorter and shorter. So that's what initially makes the move happen. Because a bass in 15 or 20 feet of water doesn't know it's 3 or 4 degrees cooler in 5 feet of water. They have no idea until they actually physically get to that environment. That's when, and then they start to feed heavy and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So that's really the whole thing. Now, remember, the Gizzard Shad Lake show and the Blueback Herring and the Threadfin show. We did 3 baitfish shows. Okay.
Yep.
So the Blueback Herring, they live in open water all the time, but they migrate to the backs of creeks and pockets and rivers in the winter, late fall, winter. They're going to have a mass migration. Crazy enough, gizzard shad do the exact same thing. They migrate up the creeks and the rivers. Okay. Threadfin shad will migrate, but threadfin shad want current. So they're going to want an active water flow.
Okay.
Okay. So now hear this. You know that gizzard shad cannot tolerate dirty, turbid water. Where you go in the back of a creek and the water's, you could see it. It's dirty. It's thick. It looks thick. Blueback herring can't live in that. The blueback needs clean water to survive. So the bluebacks, if you run into that situation, you pull out to the transition where the dirty water meets the clean water, and that's where you're going to run into your bluebacks. Now, conversely, gizzard shad can totally tolerate that dirty water, and they can live in it and thrive in it. So this is important because if you're on a gizzard shad lake and you encounter dirty water in the back of a pocket or a creek, you don't have to find the clear transition zone because those bait fish are already up there. That's when your spinner bait's going to knock them dead. Your big bodied square bills are going to knock them dead. That's when, you have to understand all of this so you can understand what you're fishing. So if you're on a blueback lake where that's the main forage, you have to understand what the bluebacks want. If you have a gizzard shad or a threadfin lake, you got to understand what they want, because right now everything's bunching up. The most important element in this transition period that you could ever have is bait. If you don't have bait, you don't have bass. The transition period is 100% predicated on bait. The bait's moving where it's got to go, mostly shallow up pockets and stuff. Now they'll retreat to the guts, the deep guts and pockets and everything, but they're going towards the bank. Okay. In the springtime, you're like, yeah, but all the bass are going to the bank in the spring. You got to find the bait. The bait's not the most important thing in the spring. The most important thing in the spring for bass is spawning. And so what they're doing is they're going to their spawning locations. There's going to be food for them to eat when they get there. They're going to spawn. This transition is all about the bait. That was the main thing I wanted.
I cannot. I'm laughing as you talk about this, Frank, because as you know, I just got back from Lake of the Ozarks Bassmaster Open there. And 2 things that I want to point out. One, you talk about the bait in the guts, and I was skipping a football jig, which is something that I don't think a lot of people do. I mean, I finished 60th out of like 200 guys. So it wasn't a great event. It wasn't a total disaster. It was a solid. I had a limit each day, but I was skipping a 1/2 ounce football jig, which you wouldn't think that skipping a jig around docks for isolated fish would be predicated on bait. However, I found out during my practice and as the tournament started, and I didn't really realize this until the actual tournament, but what I realized was all of the good pockets that had docks in it where I was getting bit had suspended balls of threadfin out in the middle of the guts, and I was fishing secondary rounded pea gravel points that went back to a narrow gut. And I basically was cutting across and was like, my God, that's a big ball of bait out in the middle. And then I started scoping around and saw lots of balls of bait. And then I started catching fish off the balls of the bait. And this was on day one of the tournament. And I realized that all the pockets where I was getting bit out of, those fish were back there. They were utilizing the docks for cover, but they were back there because the balls of bait were back there and migrating towards the backs.
100%.
The other thing that I thought of during the time when I saw it was we stayed at a big VRBO condo, and they had the long docks, Lake of the Ozark docks where we had boat slips where we stayed on the water. Well, during practice, you'd walk down, or in the day, you'd walk down the row of the walkway to get down to the dock, and you could look down in the water. Well, in the water, up against into the rocks, were big gizzards like that, and they were swimming in groups of 4 to 10, and they were feeding on the bottom, exactly like you talked about in the gizzard shad episode, as to why ribbon tail worms work, as to why massive giant baits on the bottom work. And they literally were down in the rock, and the only thing you saw was their tail up, and it was doing this.
Yeah.
And I said, my God, it's a 12-inch worm.
100%, dude. I mean, I got it here in my gizzard shad notes. Let me see.
It was exactly like you described it on the show.
I'm trying to see what percentage. I think it was
20%.
20% of the time they feed on the bottom. It's funny because I didn't pull these notes out until this morning. Well, I can't really.
I think it was like 20% of the time they feed off the bottom. I mean, I just remember that.
It's a fact. And that's important to know. It's like this. When with blueback herring, when the sun comes out, the bluebacks go down. All right. With gizzard shad, when the sun comes out, they come up.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to realize, gizzard shad. I'm sorry, opposite. Gizzard shad go down when the sun comes up. Blueback herring come up when the sun comes up. So that's important to know too, because if you're crankbait fishing, that's why on gizzard shad lakes, when it's sunny, bright and sunny out, the crankbait bite's so astronomical, because all the gizzard shad pack down on the rock piles and stuff. And that's why the bluebacks, when the sun's out, they're near the surface. You got a great top water bite going. You got that mid column bite going. So that it's important to know. I mean, bait fish it's an important thing. And if you want to go back, you can look at some of the old episodes. We did a blueback herring episode, a gizzard shad episode, and a separate threadfin episode for all the details. And then you can get that, and they're accurate. They're very accurate.
Knots, football jigs, and bait fish transition. A trifecta for show 132.
Yes. I had to get back into bass fishing after the last episode of
CTO.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But I gotta really, I don't know if I should thank you or punch you next time I see you, because I am so addicted.
It's bringing joy to your life.
Oh, I am so addicted to it. It's just filthy.
You know what's
so addicted to
supposed to allegedly, potentially come out tomorrow?
I do not. Should I know?
Yeah. It's not out right now.
All right.
Just checking to make sure the 2024 Bassmaster Open schedule.
Oh God. You guys are gonna guilt me.
All right. Before it comes out, we'll end it on this. We're talking, so you're not obviously fishing them all. You're fishing them to try if potential, even if there's a 5% chance. Let's just entertain that hypothetical.
We're gonna entertain the hypothetical.
Okay, we've done this before, but name the list of lakes that people, when they see this schedule, if it enhances the odds of Frank, name the lakes that you'd like to see on it. that
man.
because it's going to be 3. They're going to do Division 1, Division 2,
Right.
Division 3. There's going to be 3 fisheries. Give me some names of the lakes that possibly people should be looking for to see if maybe there's a glimmer of hope that the legend is going to see these next year. The legend, the boat that you fish out of, the legend will see these waters.
Right. Not me, but
the legend
craft.
Alpha will see us. Your
my
watercraft.
My watercraft. I would go Champlain, Oneida, Thousand Islands, Norman. Although Norman, maybe not, but maybe. It will not be. I don't want to go to Lake Douglas, and I don't want to go to
the James River.
The James River. I just don't.
Either of those would be a killer.
Yeah. I nah.
But you would do like a Hartwell.
Yeah, Hartwell wouldn't disturb me too bad.
A Lanier.
Oh God Almighty! I want to fish Lanier so bad.
Okay, so we're looking for anywhere in New York.
Pretty much.
Any spotted bass, Clearwater spotted bass fishery in the Carolinas.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I mean, if you're going to do it, look, if I hypothetically, if I'm going to do this, I'm doing it to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to try to win one to make a classic.
Well, also, I mean, to fish it with me, I mean, it would be great content.
It'd be a ball. It'd be an absolute blast. You
have a year to put in your life where sometimes you have to do things that don't make sense, but just because you can, and they add value to your life, and you enjoy it.
Well, that's true too.
I mean,
that's factual.
Sometimes you have to say, listen, I know this isn't the most logical. Well, look at me. I've been doing this for 5 years. I know this isn't the most logical thing to be doing or the most economically feasible, but it adds value to my life. Right. I enjoy it. It gives me a purpose when I wake up. And by God, I'm going to freaking do it.
Well, there you go.
Regardless of what other people think.
Well, you don't do things in your life based on what other people think, or you'll be doing a lot of what you don't want to do and not much of what you want to do. So I never base my decisions on what I think other people are going to think, because I don't really care what they think.
Yeah.
You know, I base it on what's in the best interest of me and my family first, and then you know, that's how I operate.
Like a Chesapeake Bay or something, I'd be out on that too. That does.
I did well on the Chesapeake, but conditions lined up for it. All the traditional ways of fishing that river weren't working, and I went to what I knew the most, and that was current. Okay. And I absolutely plowed them. And quite frankly, I don't want to say I should have won it, because I didn't win it. So if you don't win it, you shouldn't win it. But I knocked my lower unit off the morning of the third day within 8 minutes of the tournament and was out for the day.
What about a Potomac situation?
The Potomac, I'm hot cold on the Potomac. It's a great fishery. It's a great fishery, but to drive all the way down there to fish that, probably not.
You want smallmouth and spotted bass. That's what we're looking for that division.
Yeah, I mean, largemouth too, but I just want, like, there's certain lakes that I really like. And if you're it's like this. If you're going to fish for a win, which is so hard to do, okay, you have to put the variables in your favor. So why would I take a lake that I don't have enough time on to relearn it or to repattern it, when you could go to places that you're more comfortable with and you can get in the groove faster? And so that's really it. I mean, it's not that I'm afraid to fish a different lake. I'm not. Yeah. I just don't have the time to put in to do it properly.
I hear you.
And I'm not going to throw the money in the garbage. So.
Now, I mean, I've got a little bit of an inside track on where we are not going, so I don't want to either make you jump for joy or burst your bubble. But ideally, here's what I would like to see. I would like to see Norman, Lanier, and Hartwell, the Spotted Bass Tour, all in the fall.
Yeah, exactly.
That would make my heart smile.
Exactly. October through December.
Ideally, that would be my.
Yeah, and Norman used to be a real heavy blueback herring lake, but it's not. It's changing its demeanor.
It is.
The shad are making more of a comeback in that lake, and the bluebacks are dwindling.
All right, Frank, this was a good show. We weren't exactly sure where it was going to go when we jumped on,
but
I learned a lot. I hope everyone else learned a lot. It was day 4 on day 3. LureNet.com for all of your
BTL
needs.
Capital BTL 23.
Yes, and bassfishinghof.com, page 3, bid on the Frank Scalish 101 drawing. Hold that drawing up one more time, Frank.
Yes, let's get my drawing up to where everybody else is at.
Well, you're above a lot of jerseys and stuff already.
Outstanding.
Yeah, I mean that would be cool in the man cave. Oh, it also includes a call from Frank Scalish too.
Yeah, don't forget that. A bloviation period.
That sounds odd.
Where we will talk about anything that we want to. How did Mark say it? We're going to
talk about bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about.
AKA bowling and the weather.
Yeah. And smart financial decisions.
Which we're talking about a non-smart financial decision.
Yeah. And sometimes straight edge rock and roll. That was his favorite
that's
topic.
True.
Black flag, that type of stuff. Oh, we need to check in and see. SNU Bowling.
Oh, yeah. You guys are sponsoring that now.
Yep. Uh-oh. See the music? The music always does that when it's time to... Nope, still not up. I was making sure if can you hear that? The music starts skipping every time we've been on too long. It's like, okay, we've had enough.
That's like last call, flickering lights.
It is. Last call. Boy, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since I've been out when the last call happened, Frank.
It's been more than a minute for me.
You're like, that was last Thursday.
Yeah, it was last night.
on a Tuesday. Thursday,
on a Tuesday. Tuesday's the new Friday.
All right.
Hey, if this is day 4 today, that makes tomorrow Friday.
It is. Crack open a cold Coors. Go catch some more crappie. I'm headed to the Hall of Fame.
Have fun, dude. Say hi.
All right, this has been another edition of Day 4 on Day 3 with Frank Scalish. We'll be back next Monday. Gretchen from St. Jude talking about the Dick Hiley St. Jude Bass Classic, the 25th anniversary edition of this tournament. This year alone raised over $1 million for St. Jude. I'll be headed up there. I'll be live from Omni on Tuesday after Monday's show. Frank, have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See ya.